Chair recognizes Representative Romero, Representative Supica.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the majority ought to pass as amended report by Committee Amendment A.
Representative Bangor, Representative Supica moves to ask that the majority ought to pass as amended report. Chair recognizes the representative from Chair recognizes the representative from Morna, Representative Osher.
I would like to speak to my motion. I'd like to request a roll call.
Representative from Morna, Representative Osher requests a roll call. Sufficient number requesting a roll call. Roll call is in order. The member may proceed.
Mr. Speaker and colleagues of the House, I'm proud sponsor of LD 1897. I urge you to reject the pending motion because I support the minority report. The majority report is ought to pass with Amendment A, and Amendment A eliminates the adjustment to the microbial testing requirements for Sungrown for cannabis. The minority report, which I support, raises the microbial testing limit for total yeast and mold from 10,000 to 100,000 colony forming units. That's abbreviated as CFUs. Maine's microbial testing rules were established in 2018. Our state codified the testing rules put into statute in other early adopting states that set allowable total yeast and mold at very low levels, 10,000 CFUs, before studies were available to identify the actual dangerous levels of total yeast and mold on these crops. The present rules were written by those familiar with the conditions of growing cannabis indoors, but the rules put an undue burden on those growing this crop outside under the sun. The American Herbal Pharmacopoeia, the education organization dedicated to promoting the responsible use of herbal products and herbal medicine, states that the recommended limits may require adjustment over time. It also states that higher levels of mold can also occur in seasons of heavy rain without undue damage to the crop and may justify a material existing and proposed limits as long as there is no visible damage to the plant and other qualitative specifications are met. Well, in Maine, the growing these crops outdoors, what this bill codifies as sun-grown, often we experience very rainy growing seasons. This relentless rain year has put all growers of sun-grown cannabis in danger of having their entire crops destroyed because the yeast and mold growing on the plant puts the crop over the very low limit that is presently in statute. In addition, organic farming best practices include inoculating plants with beneficial microbes. These beneficial microbial communities improve plant health, and because the beneficial microbes occupy surface area that may otherwise be colonized by detrimental microbial communities, they help decrease the presence and growth of pathogens on those plants. I bring this part of the bill to your attention because the test for microbial yeast and mold is for all populations of microbes. The beneficial microbes get counted too. This means that growers who have growing plants outside in rainy conditions and those using organic best practices will fail the test, despite the fact that there may be no microbes present that are harmful to humans. As more studies have shown that higher numbers of CFUs on cannabis plants, that is between 10,000 and 100,000 CFUs, are not harmful to human health, regulators in several states have moved away from the original low total yeast and mold threshold. Connecticut, Maryland, and Michigan all recently raised their threshold from 10,000 to 100,000. They joined New Jersey and Florida that were already using the higher threshold. New York State removed any CFU limit and the pass-fail impact of testing in an effort to support outdoor cultivators. That state requires only that growers test their plants and report the test results to the state. 12 states don't require total yeast and mold testing at all, and instead test for specific pathogens to humans. The states that don't require testing for microbial, at least this one state that doesn't require testing for total yeast and mold is California, and that state has the largest cannabis market in the country. Maine is failing and not allowing growers to market products that would make it to market in 18 other states. This is an economic factor for our farmers in Maine. That's why I would like you to follow my light. The minority report will raise the microbial testing limit from 10,000 to 100,000 CFUs. At present, the regulation is not actually guaranteeing better health and safety, but it is inhibiting growers who use organic and sun-grown practices. I encourage you to follow my light and vote against the pending resolution with the goal of passing the minority report.
The chair is pleased to announce the presence in the gallery of Quincy Clifford. They are the guests, the representative from Lincoln and Representative Gifford. Will Quincy please rise and accept the greetings of the House? The chair recognizes the representative for Poland, Representative Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the minority report, which is exactly identical to the majority report, except for this 100,000 CFUs that we've been talking about last week and today. The bill, both reports would allow medicinal cannabis caregivers to cultivate the same number of plants outdoors during the growing season as could be produced indoors annually, creating an equal opportunity. It amends the definition of outdoor to include sun-grown cultivation practices that utilize three-season greenhouses. This would help lower Maine's cannabis energy footprint and support sustainable growing practices. Connecticut, Maryland, Michigan joined New Jersey, Florida in raising the limit from 10,000 to 100,000. Because our limit is so low right now, Mr. Speaker, our small businesses are losing money. If a batch fails, say it's at 11,000 CFUs, that reduces their value from the flower per pound drastically from some estimates $3,200 down to $800 because they turn the flower into distillate, which goes into the cartridges and edibles. Then they have to retest it. A retest is $560. I'm a fan of DMX as well. A good representative from the county. Young at heart, young at heart. So, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Hawaii, Montana, Missouri, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, they all don't even test for this. New York, in their adult use program, they don't have a pass-fail threshold. They say just label it and let the consumer decide. So Maine is falling behind to our neighboring adult use states. And Mr. Speaker, because of our current policy, operators are buying radiation machines. They cost $250,000. So all the big boys, they get to buy the radiation machines and they blast all the weed right through it and zap it. And then the cannabis passes. Is the mold gone? I don't know. Is the radiation bad for your health? I don't know. There's not a lot of studies on it. So our current policy just encourages the big corporations to use the radiation machines as a loophole over even, and then the small growers who want to grow outdoors, they can't afford a $250,000 machine that came from China that may or may not even be calibrated correctly. So, I mean, we're talking about labor safety. Down in Massachusetts, because of lax regulation, someone died from inhaling trim in one of their rooms. So we don't have our arms appropriately wrapped around these radiation machines. The way to get rid of the radiation machines is change the policy to begin with, raise the limit to 100,000 and let our farmers farm. So I would hope that folks follow my light and the representative from Orono's light and give our farmers a fighting chance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the representative from Biddeford, Representative Mallon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the pending motion and in support of the strong 10-2 bipartisan majority report of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. This report was carefully crafted and is a result of a significant amount of time invested by many members of the committee, none less so than our Honorable House Chair, my good friend from Bangor, who worked with fairly strident voices on both sides of the issues facing our committee and helped craft the compromise. The reason why I do not support the minority report is that there are going to be discussions over the off season involving a number of different pieces of legislation and over the subject of testing and what is important to test, what levels are important to test for, what levels are safe, and we're going to incorporate the voices of science of the public health community, of operators, of a wide variety of stakeholders, so that we can figure out the best way to move forward with testing. So in my view, making changes to the testing requirements, as the minority report does, is premature, because you will hear from people who think that certain levels of total yeast and mold are relatively safe to consume and to smoke. You will also hear from other public health experts, people who have studied what things do to the human body, that certain levels are too high. So I would urge the body to support the majority report, which helps reform regulations so that these small sun-grown operators can get moving in the right direction, can help improve their businesses, and do so as soon as possible, which I support, and support the committee work that has happened and will continue to happen. Please follow my light. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the representative from Bangor, Representative Supika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hadn't intended on standing, but since I was brought up in the conversation, I thought I would stand and speak for myself. I actually support the policy of raising from 10,000 to 100,000 CFUs. I do. And the representative from Biddeford is correct that we did come up with a compromise. And part of what was happening is that there is a lot of new members on the committee who, when you come to VLA and you learn about cannabis, it's almost like it's a wall of cannabis, and it's a lot of people coming at you, and a lot of them are really upset, and a lot of them are really upset about over-regulations and how hard it is to operate a business and to make any money. An example I'll give: in adult use, you can put your heart and soul into raising a crop, because it is a crop. These are farmers, and even if it fails the testing requirements for the total yeast and mold, so if it's over 10,000 CFUs, you can't sell it, but you still have to pay an excise tax on it. So when looking at the science and what is harmful and what is not, there are a lot of experts that say 100,000 is also acceptable. I did vote on the majority report in an effort to try to advance some form of policy, because I did work with an organic farmer who is working with MOFCA to try to develop organic farming standards for cannabis so that we can grow outdoors in adult use, so that we can use less electricity, so that we can have craft cannabis. And I have to say, if there's one thing that the entire committee heard loud and clear, is that there is an opportunity in Maine for us to have craft cannabis, much in the same way that we have craft beer. Because and it will happen, when it becomes legal federally, all of these large corporate grows that use a lot of electricity will move down south, where they have more sunshine, more grow time. And what will we have left but small farmers? And we want organic farming practices to thrive here. We want to have a Maine cannabis trail, like we have a Maine beer trail. And we want people to come to our state and partake of the things that we grow from the soil. Raising it to 100,000 CFUs, I do not think would harm folks. I do think that we have a tendency in VLA to get really dug in. And in cannabis, we often get so dug in that we're never able to find compromise. And I'm going back and forth on this one. I'm having a really hard time, because I don't want to hurt any of the members on my side of the aisle that voted on the majority. In fact, I don't want them to feel betrayed by me, but I also agree with the policy in Report B. So, at this point, I'm gonna sit down, and if anybody else has anything to say, I'm gonna listen. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the representative from Auburn, Representative Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a clarifying point. If I vote no for this, I'll have the opportunity to vote yes on Amendment B. Report B, excuse me.
The chair would say that if this report that's before us fails, it's likely that the next report that would be moved is the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Pending questions, acceptance, the majority ought to pass the amended report. Is the House ready for the question? The chair open the vote. The sergeant arms secure the chamber. First call of absentees. Three members in their seats who have not yet voted. Two members in their seats who have not yet voted. One member who's not yet voted. One member who has not yet voted. Have all not voted? Chair will close vote. Click on total chair when that's about 54 voting affirmative, 92 in the negative. The motion fails. Chair recognizes Representative from Bangor, Representative Supika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the minority ought to pass by amended by committee amendment B.
Representative from Bangor, Representative Supika, Mr. House to accept the minority ought to pass as amended by committee amendment B report. Chair recognizes Representative from Biddeford, Representative Mallon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request a roll call.
Representative from Biddeford, Representative Mallon requests a roll call in order for the chair to order roll call must have expressed desire of 1/5 members present. Sufficient number requesting roll call. Roll call is in order. Pending questions, acceptance of the minority ought to pass as amended report. Is the House ready for the question? Chair open the vote. The sergeant arms secure the chamber. First call of absentees. Two members who have not yet voted. One member who have all now voted. Chair will close the vote. Clicker on total. Chair will announce the vote. 110 voting in the affirmative, 35 in the negative. The motion prevails. First reading of the bill.
Be
Mr.
enacted
Baker,
by
Representative
public
Civic,
as
Mr. The bill
follows.
be
Section
dispensed with the
122,
House. It's a vote. The clerk will read Committee Amendment B.
Committee Amendment B is
Mr. Baker,
found.
Representative Civic, Mr. The Committee Amendment B be dispensed with the pleasure of the House. It's a vote. It's now the pleasure of the House to adopt Committee Amendment B. It's a vote. Is there objection to suspension of the rules? Purpose against the bill. Second reading at this time. Hearing none. Second reading of the bill by title only.
An act regarding sun-grown cultivation in the medical use and adult use cannabis industries.
This bill having its two readings and suspension of the rules is now the pleasure of the House to be passed, be engrossed, and sent for concurrence. It's a vote. It will be sent to the Senate. Is there objection to all matters being sent forthwith? Hearing none. Ordered sent forthwith.